Disclaimer: the following program is designed to offend, provoke, and challenge your religious sensibilities. It contains content that will likely offend anyone who holds religion sacred. This is for those with thick skin or a taste for the harsh truth. If you're easily offended or cherish your religious views, please turn off now. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. You have been warned. Welcome back to Troll the Verse, where biblical patriarchs go to collect retirement wives and bad theology gets dragged through the dirt like Esau's dignity. Break out the coffee, grab something stupid, because we are this close to 5,000 subscribers. And that means 5,000 people have decided to watch me publicly roast Genesis like it owes me child support. We're growing, we're thriving, and no, we're not stopping. The algorithm may be confused, your church group may be concerned, but you're exactly where you need to be. So go ahead, like this video, like you're trying to bribe your way into the promised land, comment like you just found out Jacob was named after a heel grab, and subscribe like you're trading your birthright for lentil stew and regret, because today we're diving into Genesis 25, a chapter where Abraham has a surprise retirement litter, Hagar might be in witness protection under a new name, and Esau sells his soul for soup. Let's go. So Abraham, supposedly about 140, suddenly addeth and taketh a wife. Sarah's dead, Isaac's married, and Grandpa decides it's time for a late life sequel nobody asked for. 6 sons show up out of nowhere, and by verse 6, Abraham's handing them parting gifts and booting them east, basically saying, thanks for playing, now stay out of Canaan before the will gets read. Keturah's name means incense, but the same root can read tied up, and later rabbis spin that into her being bound in virtue while she waited for Sarah to croak. She's a utility womb. She is given no family, zero backstory, just fragrance and fertility on demand. The Targumunculus and the Midrash, echoed by Rashi, insist she's actually Hagar with a fresh label because Abraham remarrying looked awkward. The Book of Jubilees can't swallow that and calls her a third wife instead, proving the editors were making it up as they went. Whichever version you pick, one giant hole refuses to go away. Verse 2 lists 6 sons, but the headline child, Ishmael, from chapters 16 and 21, is missing. Ishmael already got his own genealogy later in this chapter, with Hagar named loud and clear. So, if Keturah is Hagar, Ishmael should be first in line. He isn't. His name is missing. So either the author forgot the most famous kid in the story, or later commentators were slapping putty over a crack. It's the latter. Genesis calls her Abraham's wife. 1 Chronicles downgrades her to concubine. She's a full partner when the lineage chart needs prestige, a side unit when Isaac's inheritance needs protection. Whatever works, I guess. 6 sons, 2 grandsons, 8 great-grandsons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Median, Ishbak, Shua, plus the rest. No stories attached. They're labels the writers could yank later to slap a stamp on every tribe they met. Sheba and Dedan already showed up as Cushite descendants in Genesis 10, so one set of editors said Hamite, another said Abrahamite. Josephus butchers the spellings into Zambran and Jazar, and ships them off to a region he calls Troglodytis by the Red Sea. Islamic genealogists juggle Midian again, sometimes Lot's line, sometimes a prophet named Shu'aib. This family tree rolls like a tumbleweed blown wherever theology needs it. In Exodus, Midianites are Moses' in-laws. Jethro gives him leadership advice and even worships Yahweh. In Judges, Midian shows up as a camel-riding menace, and Judges 8 casually calls them Ishmaelites because the editors misfiled their own relatives. Are they Keturah's kids, Ishmael's, both, or neither? Depends which chapter needs a bad guy. Isaiah 60 verse 6 grabs Midian, Ephah, and Sheba to haul gold and incense to Zion. Why these 3? Maybe because their tags were gathering dust here in Genesis 25. Nothing like recycling a name list to make a prophecy sound exotic. This has nothing to do with family. It's all about that special land. The point of listing Keturah's sons isn't to honor them. It's to slap Abraham's name on every desert tribe in the region. Oh, you live east of Canaan? Congrats, you're Abraham's kid now. But don't get any ideas, you're still outside the promise. Half the names vanish, the rest come back as enemies or in weird messianic camel parades. This isn't a family tree. It's an excuse for territorial control dressed up as a genealogy. This is just them drawing lines on a map, which they justify using lines in a scroll. All right, let's look at dying Abraham's estate plan. Isaac gets everything. Not some, not the lion's share. The Hebrew even spells it out, kol esher lo, so the whole vault. And the half dozen sons from Keturah, plus whoever else qualifies as concubines, they get gifts and a one-way ticket out of the narrative. Early Midrash even claims those gifts were occult trinkets and demonology manuals, so basically, here's a cursed swag bag, now scram. This is the Bible's idea of generational fairness. You 6, here's a handful of consolation souvenirs. Pack your tents and head east before Isaac starts measuring the property line. No will reading, no tribal allotments, no emotional closure, just Isaac inheriting everything and the rest being deliberately expelled. While Abraham is still breathing, well, that's not inheritance, it's a purge. And concubines here is plural, see that S? Even if you buy the rabbinic stunt that Keturah is Hagar in disguise, you still have extra unnamed wombs on the payroll. This isn't a sentimental patriarch, it's a dynasty manager, outsourcing heirs and consolidating power around the miracle boy Isaac. Sending them east is exile code. Cain goes east of Eden, Lot drifts east to Sodom, now Abraham's spare heirs get marched east to Canaan. In the biblical compass, east means offstage. These kids aren't supplemental tribes, they're strategic write-offs to keep Isaac's claim squeaky clean. Bottom line, this passage isn't about some kind of warm family legacy, it's about asset consolidation. The covenant pipeline runs through one name, Isaac, and everyone else is politely erased, so future editors don't have to explain why God's chosen line is a party of one. And now, finally, Abraham dies at 175. Midrash Rabbah even claims God shaved 5 years off his lifespan so Grandpa wouldn't have to watch Esau turn into a delinquent. Divine mercy or brand protection, take your pick. The text calls it a good old age, aged and satisfied, and says he was gathered unto his people, which is just Bible language for, we're done writing about him now, let's wrap this up with some dignity. And for the record, that phrase isn't about a family grave. It pops up when people die miles from any ancestral tomb, so it really just means exit stage left. Forget the abandoned sons, the wife-swapping detours, the near sacrifice of his miracle child. He dies satisfied. Sure, I'm sure he did die satisfied with a bunch of concubines. But then comes the real surprise cameo. Ishmael shows up. Yep, the same Ishmael who got cast out into the desert like a liability in Genesis 21 is suddenly back to help bury Dad. No conversation, no reconciliation, just, hi, I'm here to drag the corpse into the cave. It's the most passive-aggressive funeral reunion in Scripture. Imagine being kicked out of the family fortune and still showing up to carry the casket. And where do they bury him? The cave of Machpelah, again. That's the cave Abraham insisted on buying at full price back in Genesis 23, even though God supposedly promised him the land already. The name literally means double cave, and modern digs under the shrine at Hebron have turned up Herod stonework and Byzantine layers, but zero Abraham bones, so the only double we can prove is the double scoop of later propaganda. Nothing says faith inheritance loophole like God handing you land and you still writing a check for a tomb. Also, Isaac is named first, even though Ishmael is the oldest. Rashi has to spin that by claiming Ishmael finally repented and acknowledged Isaac's rank. Because even at the gravesite, the commentators can't tolerate the chosen kid coming second. Birth order, history, irrelevant. Isaac goes on top. So Abraham dies, the text says he was satisfied, and everything else, the evicted kids, the concubine purges, the contradictions, gets buried in the same cave as his body. So Abraham's barely cold in the cave, and the text drops a single line. God blesses Isaac. No vision, no fireworks, just a legal-sounding handoff stamped like paperwork at closing time. The narrative calls it a blessing, but gives zero details. No altar, no covenant speech. We won't see any specifics until chapter 26, where the blessing arrives bundled with famine, land quarrels. If that's divine favor, I'd hate to see what a curse looks like. And where does Isaac park his tent? By the well of the living one, the same well where Hagar sobbed her way through an angelic encounter in Genesis 16. The chosen heir settles on ground branded with the concubine story, and the narrator doesn't blink. Rashi later tries to patch the oddity, claiming Isaac liked the spot because he once fetched Hagar from there for Abraham, but that's commentary scrambling for a motive the text never actually provides. Yeah, Isaac was already lingering at this well in Genesis 24:62 when Rebekah showed up, so I guess he never left. Meanwhile, archaeology can't locate the well of the living one with any certainty. Scholars toss out candidates like Ain Muwaile, but no dig has tied the spring to Abraham. The well of the living one who sees me remains as invisible as the logic that plants Isaac on Hagar's turf without a word of reflection. And here's the extra fun part. If Abraham exiled Hagar there, whose land is it exactly? There's no record of him buying anything near that well. No divine deed, no purchase, nothing. So unless Hagar carved out that survival space herself, Isaac is now living on land that was never his to begin with. But the legacy of Bir Lahai is this: a missing well on possibly stolen land, centered around a woman the story tried to erase, until the chosen heir quietly moves in and acts like the place was his all along. The story leaves a legal vacuum. Scholarly explanations range from nomads don't file deeds to God already stamped mine on the whole map to later editors weren't sweating continuity. Whatever angle you pick, the rhetorical punchline still lands. The chosen heir plants himself on a site birthed by the concubine the narrative tried to eject, and no scribe bothers to explain the paperwork. So Abraham dies satisfied. Isaac inherits a blessing defined by silence, and then he moves straight into the backyard of the woman his household erased. The covenant line continues. Just don't ask why it's now squatting at Hagar's well, because the text sure won't tell you. Welcome to Ishmael's epilogue. After being kicked out, erased from the inheritance, and brought back only to bury his father, the text finally tosses him a bone. 12 princes according to their peoples. The number is no accident. 12 is the literary flex the editors reserve for legit nation, mirroring Israel's 12 tribes, so no one can say God shortchanged the desert branch of the family. Sounds regal, right? Except we never hear from most of these princes again. Nebaioth and Kedar get quick cameos. Nebaioth because Esau marries his sister, Kedar because Isaiah and Jeremiah use him as shorthand for Arab caravan country, but the rest vanish into the dunes. The Assyrian annals rave about Cadarite camel raids, yet the Bible shrugs and moves on. Verse 12 reintroduces Hagar. Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, as if we forgot. The story can't say her name without stapling on her slave resume and foreign passport, a final reminder that the mother of 12 Arabian chiefs still ranks below the miracle child's mom. Then Ishmael dies. No final words, no tent-side blessings, just 137 years and a generic gather to his people. Same formula Abraham got, minus covenant fireworks. Apologists love verse 18's line, in the presence of all his brethren he fell, spinning it as Ishmael dying peacefully among family. The Hebrew can just as easily read, settled in defiance, echoing the angel's wild donkey forecast from Genesis 16, verse 12. The narrator doesn't care which angle you pick. Either way, the chapter's done with him. His descendants roam from Havilah to Shur, which is scriptural cartography for somewhere between the spice trails of Arabia and the Sinai fringes. The phrase villages and towers in verse 16 shows these tribes straddling two worlds: goat hair tents in the dunes and lookout posts on the caravan route. Nice logistical footnote, zero narrative payoff, and that's really the whole point. Ishmael gets 12 sons and a thumb smudge on the map, but no spotlight. The list is logged, the territory vaguely sketched, and the chronicle snaps shut. Isaac inherits the blessing. Ishmael gets a footnote filed under miscellaneous relatives, plus a cameo later when Joseph's brothers need a passing caravan to dump him. Cue the closing curtains. Verse 19 opens with a big yawn. These are the births of Isaac. Thanks. We already knew who his dad was. It's just throat clearing so we can get to the real drama. Isaac marries Rebekah at 40, and surprise, she's barren. Genesis can't resist its favorite gag. Every matriarch's womb comes factory sealed until God pops the latch. Quick historical hiccup here. The verse twice calls Bethuel and Laban Aramaean and drops Padanaram onto the map. Actual Aramaeans don't appear in the archaeological record until centuries later. The editors are inserting Iron Age geography into a Bronze Age story, which is pretty much like slapping Texan onto a tale of King Arthur. Isaac pleads with Yahweh and at first glance gets an instant yes until verse 26, which we haven't got to yet. Admits he's 60 when the twins arrive. So, do the math. 20 years of silence. But you aren't supposed to do the math. When Rebekah finally conceives, the twins turn her womb into a cage match. The Hebrew verb ratzatz means smash each other. She blurts, if this is a blessing, why the misery? Then skips husband, priest, and midwife and confronts Yahweh directly. She gets no comfort, just a future tribal scorecard. Two nations already wired, Edom versus Israel. Elder slated to lose, younger to rule. Merit? Character? Forget it. The outcome is fixed before either one breathes. Paul later drags this verse into Romans 9 to preach predestination, while historians note Edom only stays subservient for a brief window before flipping the script on Judah. And notice who gets the message, Rebekah. Not Isaac. He prays, but she gets the briefing by Jehovah, explaining why she'll later rig the birthright. She's not improvising. She's executing the plan Yahweh gave her. Genesis keeps coming back to this same reversal. The younger displacing the older isn't rare. It's the punchline. Joseph trumps his brothers. Ephraim trumps Manasseh. David trumps 7 older sons. This book treats firstborn rights like a setup just waiting to be overturned. Also, the infertility streak doesn't stop. That's 3 miracle births in a row. Sarah, Rebekah, and soon Rachel. Genesis turns fertility into a manufactured crisis every generation. Like Yahweh can't resist writing the same soap opera 3 times. So before the twins are born, Esau is marked for loss, Jacob for advantage, and Isaac's blessing comes with 2 decades of silence, pregnancy pain, and a prophecy that guarantees domestic chaos. So after 20 years of infertility and divine silence, the delivery finally happens, and it's twins. The first one comes out all red, like a hairy robe, which is not what you want in a newborn. No soft skin, no cherubic cheeks, just a small, angry carpet, I guess. They name him Esau, which basically sounds like a grunt, and may imply hairy, rough, or done. Esau's color cue sticks. Soon he'll swap his birthright for red stew and pick up the nickname Edom, which means red, while his territory, Seir, literally means hairy. Branding starts at birth here. Then comes Jacob, gripping his brother's heel like he's already trying to trip him on the way out of the womb. Forget symbolism, this is physical. These kids start life mid-fight, and the second one is literally born trying to pull the first one down. The name Jacob, Geav, plays on the word for heel, Keav, but also carries the sense of supplanting or undercutting. Jeremiah even uses the verb form to mean cheat. The name is prophecy, insult, and foreshadowing all at once. And just so you don't miss the timeline, the verse reminds us Isaac is 60 when this all goes down. He waited 2 decades for this moment, only to be handed a red beast and a scheming ankle grabber. Midrash adds a flourish. Jacob popped out already circumcised because why not start the rivalry with a one-up? This isn't a family, it's a civil war that just got born. Esau's body marks him as the wild one. Jacob enters with a grip that says he'll take what he wants. The favoritism hasn't even started yet, and the whole dynamic is already poisoned. The rest of Genesis is just these 2 boys making good on the disaster baked into this birth. So the boys grow up, and surprised, they're opposites. Esau becomes a rugged outdoorsman, while Jacob stays home, plain and tent-bound. The Hebrew word tam, used of Job for blameless and of Jacob here for quiet, isn't halo language, it's closer to smooth operator. Esau's out hunting, Jacob's perfecting his lentil recipe. That's the contrast. Verse 28 slams the gas pedal on the family dysfunction. Isaac loves Esau because he likes the meat. The Hebrew can also mean he loves Esau's tall tales about hunting. Dad may be hooked on the stories as much as the venison. Rebekah loves Jacob. That's it. Taste buds and blatant favoritism. Now for the infamous stew scam. Isaac was 60 when the twins were born and 75 when Abraham died. That means Jacob and Esau are teenagers at Grandpa's funeral. Rabbinic tradition says the lentils Jacob is cooking are the standard morning dish for Abraham's burial, circular food symbolizing the cycle of life. While Jacob handles comfort food for the wake, Esau barges in, exhausted and starving. Esau can't even name the dish, just that red thing. The double red is Hebrew slapstick, so the narrator locks the joke in by branding him Edom, or red. The Midrash piles it on and claims Esau had already spent the day racking up murder, idolatry, and sexual assault, so trading the birthright is just sin number 4 before sunset. Genesis itself keeps quiet, but later commentators wanted Esau's rap sheet nice and thick. Jacob, ever the opportunist, skips empathy and goes straight for the jugular. Sell me your birthright. Remember, Deuteronomy's double portion rule won't exist for centuries. In this era, the birthright means clan leadership, covenant carrier, and family priest, essentially the keys to the entire operation. Esau answers with a very dramatic, "I'm about to die. What good is a birthright?" He's hungry, not hemorrhaging. Jacob nails it down with an oath. In that culture, an oath before God is ironclad. Hebrews 12 later calls Esau godless for treating it like napkin trash. Final line says it all. Esau despised the birthright. He doesn't just trade it, he treats it like garbage. Jacob looks ruthless, Esau looks clueless, and Israel's editors get the origin story they wanted. Edom sold its future for funeral stew. So let's recap. Abraham dies surrounded by spear kids he didn't want and a cave he paid full price for. Isaac inherits everything without lifting a finger and immediately moves onto land his dad may not have owned, conveniently tied to the concubine his family tried to erase. Ishmael shows up just long enough to carry the coffin, then disappears into the footnotes. Rebecca gets pregnant after 20 years of silence, only to be told her womb is a war zone. And Esau, he gets outplayed by lentils. Genesis 25 isn't a great family chapter, but in the end, the inheritance is locked in. Rivals get evicted, paper trails get buried. This isn't God's promise unfolding, it's a rigged game where the script already picked a winner and everyone else gets a consolation prize and shoved out the door. Thanks for watching. Like this video if you've ever been screwed out of something by a guy with soup. Comment if you've got a better inheritance plan than Abraham did, and subscribe if you don't want to miss what happens when Jacob starts pulling full-on scams in the next chapter. See you next time, unless I get exiled east.